Welcome to Fireside Giants, and my name is Alex, and my co-host here, Anthony, the Great Rivardo. Today we're talking John Mara and Dave Gettleman press conference, a lot to go through with their quotes and stuff they had to say to the media. But before we dive into that, I wanted to tell a little joke that I stumbled upon. What is the difference between the Philadelphia Eagles and possums?
What's the difference, Alex?
Sorry, what do they have in common? What do they have in common? What do the Eagles and possums have in common?
What do they have in common, Alex? I don't know. You've never told me this joke before.
Yeah. Both play dead at home and get killed on the road. Ha! Hope that woke you up. Got you excited for a little John Mara press conference. As if that's ever exciting.
It's definitely one of the better jokes you've told, but it still makes me cringe, and I'm sure that all the listeners and viewers are probably going to cringe pretty hard too. But it was kind of funny, It was kind of funny.
It's kind of funny, and I'm going to be doing this every episode, just different jokes. For the NFC East and Eagles, Cowboys watching. I'm going to be just pulling out jokes. So every episode you get a different joke. Whether you like it or not, and it's only about 5 seconds, so you can easily move on from them because some of them will be pretty cringy. But there's nothing more cringy than hearing the monotonous tone of John Mara saying that they made miscalculations in 2018, and now are finally admitting it 2 years later. So there's that. And there's a lot more to talk about with this press conference because they did talk about the 2020 season, the implications that COVID had, a little bit of Joe Judge. But before we dive into all this nitty-gritty good stuff and bad stuff, Anthony, how are you doing, my friend?
I mean, I'm a little frustrated, to be honest. I knew I was going to be once I listened to these two men who run our organization that we care so much about speak. And, of course, I am. I'm disappointed. I'm not really happy with a lot of the things that they said. They feel very confident in this team, and they seem to be very, accepting of the results that the Giants put on the field when they finished the season at 6-10. I completely disagree with a lot of the evaluation that Mara and Gettleman had. I don't think this team is necessarily like a good team. This is a bad football team with 6-10. I have seen improvement. I understand that part of it, and there's a lot to like. But there's also a lot to dislike, and I feel like John Mara and Dave Gettleman didn't really get that across in their interviews. I feel like they were, for the most part, very positive and very happy with the state of the Giants, and I feel like they're just, settling with mediocrity. They're okay with where they are, but they shouldn't be. They should be ready to take another step, and it just, the way that they spoke about everything, the way that they discussed things, first of all, mainly what they spoke about was everything that happened in the past, 2018, 2019, and 2020. They didn't talk about the future at all. You can blame that on them. You can blame that on, the Giants press team. Maybe there were some limitations on the questions that the reporters were allowed to ask. Or you can blame it on the reporters who didn't ask enough questions that really push the envelope and get good responses out of Mara and Gettleman in terms of where the Giants are headed for the future. In terms of the specific quotes, Alex is going to mention some, and we'll get further into that. But really, overall, I just got the vibe from those two men that they're okay with where the Giants are, and 15-33 is not necessarily something that they're disgusted by, like we are as fans, or at least we should be. 15-33 is an absolutely unacceptable record, an average of 5-11 over 3 years. I can't accept that, but it sounds like John Mara can, and I really hope that they make some major changes, whether that be personnel changes or front office changes going from this year to next year. There has to be a really solid offseason this season, and then a much better season. We need to make the playoffs next year in order to justify the things that Dave Gettleman and John Mara have said in their press conference today, in their press conferences in the past, because you can't just keep promising to fans that things are going to get better and then not making any changes. The one change that we made was Joe Judge, and he's such a breath of fresh air because when he does a interview and a press conference, it's so much different than when these two guys do a press conference. When Joe Judge does one, you get the answers you want. He's very open to speaking about it. He doesn't speak in loose terms. Of course, he's not going to go into contract details and stuff like that, but he will give you the answers you want, and he will give you direction, and he's not afraid to speak his mind. These guys, they don't really get into that. It's uninspired. The questions, I don't know. It's just, there's such a night and day difference between the top of the franchise and Joe Judge, and that's why I love Joe Judge so much, and I feel like that's a lot of the reason why the fans have really rallied behind our head coach this year.
Yeah, I mean, you really hit it on the head. It was pretty monotonous from both guys. A lot of stuff from the past, not much on the future. But Joe Judge does have that presence about him, and he's very open. Even Gettleman was very hesitant to say and respond to Judge's comments about the Philadelphia Eagles in that tank game the other day. And he was like, I don't know what Judge said over there, but he was kind of just stumbling along with it. But I think Judge is very open and very opinionated on what should be expected of an NFL organization and team.
I got to say this. Why are reporters asking John Mara about what he thinks about what the Eagles did and about whether or not he reached out to the Eagles organization? Why the hell would he? Why would he reach out to the Eagles? What is that question? What motivation does he have to reach out to the Eagles and say, "Oh, you made us miss the playoffs"? Like, no, the Giants had 16 games and they only won 6 of them. Why would he call them? What does he have to complain about? That's a rival. They hate us. We hate them. I didn't understand that question. I don't really understand why the reporters are even asking Gettleman and Marr about the Eagles. They work for the Giants. They own the Giants. They should ask them about the Giants and about the future of the Giants, not about the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm sick of hearing about the Eagles already. I know Alex is as well. We're sick of their fans coming into our mentions and harassing us and the rest of the fan base. Let's move on from the Eagles BS and let's start asking these guys about the Giants. But I don't know. There's a disconnect between fans and reporters, I guess, clearly.
Yeah, well, look, Eagles are screwed anyway. They have a massive Carson Wentz contract to deal with. They don't need any more stuff to deal with right now. The trouble going on between the fan base is totally overblown, in my opinion. And I think now this is about the state of the Giants in the future. There's a lot that happened this year and a lot that went wrong that needs to be addressed. And one thing that was pretty much avoided was Jason Garrett. He was brought up maybe once, and Gettleman was like, "I'm a little antsy on the idea of him moving on because that's
he's staying, dude.
He's staying.
There's no way he's leaving.
I get the impression unless he takes a head coaching gig that he will be staying for another year. It is proven that coordinators and quarterbacks have better second years together, but the problem here is this: Garrett's offense was so anemic in so many ways. The running game was good and solid. I will give him credit for that I think Saquon will thrive in that running scheme that he has implemented. But the passing concepts and everything in between was so outdated. He needs to do a lot of work. I would love if the Giants were to bring in like a young mind, maybe someone that's up and coming that isn't ready for an offensive coordinator position yet. To
a passing game coordinator.
A passing game, exactly. And I've mentioned this, and Anthony's mentioned this in the past. A passing game coordinator would be a really good thing for Jason Garrett to get somebody that can come in and overhaul that portion of the game, and then. In addition to that, it would also allow them to say, okay, we have a guy that comes in as a passing game coordinator. Garrett is probably going to move on within the next year or two. He's going to get a better opportunity. And then you just take that guy and put him as the offensive coordinator. He already knows the offense, knows the players, knows their systems and schemes and strengths. I think that is how they should actually go about this. But, that is difficult to find someone that capable because obviously if there was someone that genius, I think they would probably already be an offensive coordinator. But somebody that has a young mind that maybe learned under Sean McVay or somebody like that, quarterbacks coach from the Bills, I don't know, somebody who can come in here and maybe help.
Something like that would be phenomenal. You get somebody from one of those pass-heavy teams that knows what they're doing. You make them your passing game coordinator and let them, then you have a succession plan for when Jason Garrett moves on to another job, or if he gets fired from the team, you have a succession plan with that passing game coordinator. He can step in and at least be the interim offensive coordinator, if that were to happen, or actually get the promotion and become the team's offensive coordinator. Having somebody in the fold that will take that job over in the future is never a bad thing. And if you look around the league and you look at some of those best teams in the NFL, the best offenses, passing game coordinators and run game coordinators, like they're kind of taboo. They're not really a commonplace thing within the NFL, but those best offenses in the league, they all have them. They all have these passing game coordinators and even if they're, it's Kyle Shanahan, he's one of arguably the brightest offensive mind in the NFL, but he has like a passing game coordinator, run game coordinator. It's not necessarily about how they enhance the offense, but they're learning from, somebody like Kyle Shanahan and working in tandem. It just helps, create a scheme and allows people to focus on certain specific areas. Like, I feel like the Giants should get a passing game coordinator, or at least upgrade and, get a really good one. I think that would be an excellent idea. I mentioned this to Alex through a text. I don't know if this is a possibility, but Anthony Lynn was fired by the Chargers. He has very good passing concepts and schemes in his playbook. We've seen that in Los Angeles with the Chargers. I think that this job might be a bit beneath him.
Look who's joining.
I know. I started to think
ranks.
about it. I don't know about him as OC, but I started to think about it. This job might be a bit beneath him, going from head coach all the way down to passing game coordinator. But if he were to be willing to take that job, that would be a phenomenal fit.
Don't rule it out. Freddie Kitchens, head coach to tight ends coach.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, I would absolutely love Anthony Lynn as passing game coordinator at the very least.
And what I will say about Anthony Lynn is he will make Saquon Barkley 10 times better.
Well, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Anthony Lynn's a former running back in the NFL. Look how he uses Austin Eckler. That is how I want to use Saquon Barkley, as a receiving back who also can break big plays. He's an elite running back who should not be utilized north to south. He should be outside the tackles. Just boundary runner. He's really good when you give him space, right? The halfback draws, I don't like it because he needs momentum. But also he needs some patience behind that offensive line when they're getting beat so easily. That was like last year in 2018 when they had him like healthy, at least partially healthy. He was getting hit in the backfield so quickly. Even in week 1 against Pittsburgh, he was just met so quickly from those defensive ends around the edge, and I really need to see some improvement from the offensive line, which we did gradually throughout the season. I think that behind this line now, it would be a whole different ballgame, but I do like the way Anthony Lynn uses. I would love to see Saquon Barkley used like Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, but, ran properly, but, actually utilizes a receiver on routes, not just basic little, check release routes to the right or left side. I want to see him running seam routes, arrow routes, get back the arrow. What is going on? Like, there's so many things that this offense is missing, and Saquon Barkley can fill a lot of those roles. But one I do want to get back to the press conference, but I'll let you get one thing in after I say this one thing that John Mara did state. He did say one thing that really, really brought to my attention what they want to do this offseason, and what he said was, we know the offense needs resources. Mm-hmm. We know the offense is struggling, and they did struggle throughout the campaign. They need to get upgrades. And so that says one thing to me. They know Saquon's coming back, so you don't have to worry about a running back. Offensive line, they think they have some good pieces there, especially Dave Gettleman said. There were some really good pieces, and, Nick Gates being a first-year center, that was really impressive. Yeah. Andrew Thomas looked really good down the stretch. And that means wide receiver for me, right? They know what they have in Evan Ingram. He's basically a turnover waiting to happen, but he can make some big plays, and I don't think he's going anywhere. They already picked up his 5th-year option, so you can pretty much rule that out. But a wide receiver 1 is the only position that screams to me weakness. So I imagine it's either going to be Allen Robinson, Kenny Golladay, or Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. One of those guys are going to get signed.
Absolutely. They're going to go after wide receiver. I think we knew that ever since October when they put an inquiry into the Detroit Lions about Kenny Golladay. They called with interest for trading. I absolutely think that they will try to sign him in free agency if he hits the open market. If not, I do think it'll be a priority in the draft to get a number 1 receiver. Another thing I'll say about the passing game coordinator thing, I really think that's a really cutting edge idea that the Giants should look into. I think that could pay a lot of dividends for this team and really help with the lack of talent around the board. If you just have somebody focusing on putting together the passing schemes, I think that's a great idea. But we'll get into that. I think we'll make another video or podcast episode getting more in depth with that. I want to say, in terms of the talent on the offense, I do partially feel like Mara and Gettleman are giving Jason Garrett a little bit of a pass because they feel like there wasn't enough talent on the offense, which I don't really know how I feel about that. Like, I agree, he had it tough. He didn't have like a ton to work with, and of course if he had more to work with, this offense would probably be a lot better and score more points. But I do feel like they're just giving him a little bit of a pass, and I'm not a huge fan of that, and I feel like more responsibility or accountability should be placed on Jason Garrett's shoulders, but it didn't seem like they really put any on him. Neither of them were ever actually specifically asked about Jason Garrett though and what they thought of him, only about him potentially leaving for a head coaching job. So whether you want to say the reporters dropped the ball on that one or not, I don't know what they were allowed to ask and what they weren't. So but in terms of going forward, Dave Gettleman said that he'd be very antsy if Jason Garrett left, so that obviously means that Jason Garrett's here to stay. He wants to keep continuity for Daniel Jones. He's very confident in the way Daniel Jones played. Him and Mara had very strong things to say positively about Daniel Jones, so I thought that was interesting, and I'm pretty happy to hear that because I do think year 3 for Daniel Jones is the time where he will have a major breakout. or at least that's what I've seen from the film and indications of that. So I guess that's something to be excited about moving forward with this offense. But, I am happy to hear both Mara and Gettleman say that they're going to put an emphasis on, adding pieces to this offense, because they've added a lot to the defense the past few years. So, if they're able to invest some assets into the offensive side of the ball, I think that the Giants could really improve a lot as a football team in this offseason.
No, that's 100% right. That really comes down to, Gettleman and Joe Judge being on the same page, what personnel they want. And it really comes down to Jason Garrett staying, because as long they can't make any decisions until they know what Jason Garrett's future holds, if he's going to take that job or if he gets the job in, in Los Angeles with the Chargers, or if he stays. That really depends on what kind of personnel he wants. That's why, fans calling for Devonta Smith or Jalen Waddle, both amazing players. It doesn't matter what we want or who we think is best. It matters who Jason Garrett wants. If he wants a Des Bryant, bigger body type of guy who can go up and make 50-50 catches, it might be somebody else. It's Galladay. It's Galladay, and he's injury prone, and I personally, I love him when he's playing, but
that might be why he comes a little cheaper,
Well, this is an argument that we made because Gettleman, this is another really important point that Gettleman did say. He thinks the talks, he said very, very slightly, I don't know if anyone else heard this, but I heard it. He said that the salary cap this year could be at $175 million. That is so bad. Because right now, in 2020, it was $198.2 million. That's a $23.2 million drop-off. $23.2 million. Do you know how bad that is? That would castrate.
That's a huge portion.
That would castrate the Giants' ability. And John Mara said, we lost a ton of revenue. We were slaughtered by the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's not going to affect our free agency spending, thankfully, but it really did take a toll on them as an organization. So thankfully, most people were able to keep their jobs. I think almost everybody, if I'm not mistaken. But that's a really good job by the Giants organization, just remaining a family, keeping their people around, not having to make any cuts. That's a really, really, I want to give a kudos to them and just a really great job on their part by keeping everybody in, and I think they deserve credit there.
Yeah.
For the most part, though, when it comes to free agency, this is going to be really tough for the Giants because they already just signed Logan Ryan. And just to give you some more insight into that deal, his cap hit for 2021, because they were already anticipating some trouble ahead, for this this next cap hit. They actually made his 2021 hit about $7.3 million. So I thought it was going to be 10 or up, but they actually backloaded it to the second and third year, which is a very good move so they can have some more flexibility.
And that third year only has a $1.5 million dead cap hit, so if they really like the way McKinney is progressing by then, and they think he's going to be this all-pro if he's a starter and they don't need Logan Ryan anymore, they can get out of that deal and save like $8 million in cap space in 2023. So I actually really love the way that they structured that contract.
Amazing job.
Don't know who to give credit to, Gettleman, Judge, Abrams, collaborative effort, so I'll give credit to all of them. Excellent deal. Really happy to see Logan Ryan staying in blue for at least the next 2 years, and really love the way they structured that contract.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a perfect way to structure it because they got some cap relief for 2021, but it's really only $17 million in dead cap over 2 years, which is phenomenal for a player that really held down this defense and secondary for a majority of the season. So really, really excited about that factor. But when it comes to free agency, like I said, $23 million less than they normally have. That's Allen Robinson. That's Allen Robinson and maybe bringing back Kyler Fackrell. So keep that in mind. That's a lot of money.
That might be Leonard Williams.
Well, yes, but I also think with Leonard Williams, they could do this. They could say, okay, the $16.1 million that's going to be coming off, we can reallocate that. Plus, we're going to cut Nate Solder for the most part. I think that's a general consensus. That's $10 million post June 1st. Like, Leonard, we're going to sign you. Don't worry. Just wait until Nate Solder's gone. We have some moves post June 1st, and then
the problem is post June 1st. It's so far in the future. It's way after free agency. I don't know.
I think they just have to be below, though. Maybe they could do it prior, and then they just have to be below when the league starts, when the year starts. You know what I mean? They just have to be below when the regular season starts.
I think they have to cut him to free up the cap space before they can spend the cap space. So they would have to wait until June. So maybe they would be able to work out an agreement with Leonard Williams where they put him on
anyway.
They put him on a franchise tag for now, and they tell him we have this long-term deal, but you're going to sign it in June. They could do something like that.
It doesn't have to be Nate Solder.
Right, there's cuts that they can make. There's ways to free up the cap space.
They could do this. It's pretty simple. They could do this. Leonard Williams, $16.1 million is already available. The second the season ended, that's available. However, you could say Kyler Fackrell, that's $4.6 million. That's $22 $20.7 million right there. That's enough to sign him for the next season. And I think they'll actually try to lower that cap hit until 2022 to do a similar thing with Logan Ryan.
Backload it.
So I think they're going to be totally fine there. They will, if they want to re-sign him, they can do it today if they wanted to. They're not gonna. I think they're gonna wait a couple weeks just to reevaluate everything, see what Patrick Graham is thinking. Give these guys a chance to see their families for the first time in a couple of months. Like we said in the last podcast, running backs coach Burton Burns hasn't seen his family since July. In Alabama, so that's really, really sad. And there's a lot of similar stories around the NFL like that. And I think they're gonna give their guys a chance to go home, see their families, recuperate, and then come back. With football on their mind. But I think, this free agency period is going to be extremely different. It's similar to baseball. It's going to be slow developing. I don't think things are going to be extremely, dive right into the deep end type of things. And what I saw with the MLB, because I cover the Yankees too, what I've been seeing there is that a lot of players they're getting antsy, right? They want to wait as long as possible because the longer they wait, the better chance they can get a bigger contract. If they fold too soon, they might be signing pennies on the dollar, maybe 80 cents on the dollar. If they wait until close to spring training, they can actually maximize their deals and make sure that they're getting the real value because COVID is going to impact next season. So they want to know exactly how much of next season COVID is going to impact. They want to wait until the latest point they can sign, and it'll only maximize how much they're going to make. So actually, that benefits the Giants when it comes to Leonard Williams' deal too.
And to that point, with COVID-19 still affecting, the sports world and the entire world in general, this is my prediction and forecasting for the offseason. I think you're going to see a lot of players re-sign with their current teams. I don't think a lot of people in general around the world are very open to the idea of moving across a country during a pandemic like this and going through the hassle of trying to buy a house in this market and trying to travel here and there and move all these things and work with all of these moving companies and all these people that they have to shake hands with and sign contracts with. It's a real hassle right now. So I think you're going to see a lot of players just re-sign with the teams that they're on. And that could be, that could spell trouble in terms of the Giants trying to get a guy like Galladay or Allen Robinson or somebody like that. And I also do think that you could see a lot of one-year deals where players stay with their teams for one additional year, and then the following year, once COVID is eased up, hopefully, then they will look to sign long-term deals elsewhere. But this offseason, I think you're going to see a lot of players re-sign, stay in the cities that they're comfortable with and already living in.
Yep, and that's why I think Leonard Williams is definitely staying. I think they're going to re-sign him for sure. It's just a matter of how much and how long. I could imagine they probably they're going to try and sign him to a 3-year deal. And I think that would be a perfect with a 2-year low dead cap. But the problem is when you backload a guy, he's going to want more. He's going to want more guarantees, which I don't think the Giants have a problem guaranteeing him a lot of the money because he's never missed a game. So there's that. Like the health is a big factor for me. When you have a guy who you know is going to be out there on Sunday every single week, you can feel comfortable guaranteeing him that kind of money. But I do want to jump back into some quotes, especially when it comes to John Mara, because there was some that were interesting. And one of them is regarding to Joe Judge. And he did say he was very pleased with the selection of Joe Judge. He thought he showed great leadership and great adaptability, which I think at 38 years old for a first-year head coach, he absolutely did. During COVID, the factors he faced, really impressive there. And Mara did say, I do see progression in the building. I'm excited for what the future holds for this team. So he feels as though there's progress. Last year, he said very, very blatantly, if there's no progress being seen after the 2020 season, changes will be made. And I don't think that any big ones, or at least, are going to happen because I feel good about the team right now. I feel like we're trending up. I think that Judge and Gettleman do have some chemistry there. I think this past draft class and past free agency class were spot on. They nailed it. And because of that, I think Gettleman, you can justify him getting another year. I know there's a lot of people that disagree, and I'm on the fence. Like I'm right in the middle. I'm pretty much like Switzerland right now. I want to stay in the middle and say I'm just gonna sit here and wait and watch and see what happens because ultimately that's all we can do. I know what Gettleman's done in the past that has pissed people off. I know that he's made tons of mistakes, and I acknowledge those mistakes. But I also saw what he did with Judge this past offseason and said, okay, coaching is just important as general manager play and performance. So I do believe that cohesion, that synergy between them has improved, and it does actually look better for the future for us. And with that being said, I think you can justify him getting another year. But if it doesn't look good next year, if we don't win at least 9 games, even 10, because there's an extra game in the schedule, there's 17 games next year. If we don't win at least 10 games, he's out. That's the bottom line for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Dave Gettleman quotes were interesting. John Mara really, he said that he didn't even consider making the change. He always knew that Dave Gettleman was coming back, which really makes you question a lot of the reporters out there that had a lot of contradictory points to say to that throughout the season, saying that the Giants were going to make a change in the offseason. Clearly, John Mara said that he never felt that way. In terms of Joe Judge, who isn't pleased with what he did? He really changed the culture of the New York Giants and put us back on track. He was a breath of fresh air to the organization. We all love him, and so I'm happy that John Mara agrees with us. And then I also found interesting, he said that he was pleased with the hiring of Joe Judge, which to me, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, almost indicates that might have been more Dave Gettleman influence than we thought. Maybe that was more of a Dave Gettleman hiring than it was a John Mara hiring, which if that's the case, and all the credit in the world, Dave Gettleman, thank you for that. You absolutely hit on that, if that's true, if I'm interpreting that correctly. And then in terms of, him saying a lot of positive things about Dave Gettleman and not having any questions about his future, I think, a lot of that's really debatable. He did mention how he was really a fan of the way that Gettleman and Judge work together. That's something that I've said a lot. If Judge wants to continue to work with Gettleman and he likes working with him and they work well together, then whatever Judge wants, I want, dude. Seriously, that's how I feel about Joe Judge and how confident I am in him. If he wants Gettleman, then he gets Gettleman. But my problem is, it seems like the way that John Mara was describing it, it was a very mandated from ownership thing that we are keeping Dave Gettleman and it's not really Joe Judge's choice. That's at least the message that I got that came across from John Mara. He said he likes the way that they collaborated, but it was an ownership decision that they are keeping Dave Gettleman, and he never even thought otherwise. So I don't know if that's because him and Joe Judge have such a great relationship that they never even had the opportunity to think otherwise, or what. We're not inside of the building, but I don't know. John Mara, I feel like, should be more skeptical on the part of Dave Gettleman and where things are going. I know he had a really good 2020 season or off season, but 2018, 2019, he made a lot of mistakes, and I feel like he should be held accountable for those, and he absolutely hasn't been. And then I think that's where we're going to shift gears next, is when we talk about the quotes that him and Gettleman both had about the 2018 off season, because I found that stuff very interesting. But just overall, I am a little bit confused by John Mara's reasoning and thought process behind having such confidence in Dave Gettleman when, we're averaging a 5-11 record under Dave Gettleman. How can you be so confident in a guy that's put that together for 3 years straight? I understand Joe Judge has really brought a breath of fresh air and put a lot more confidence in this fan base and organization. But in terms of him being so set in stone and confident and certain about Dave Gettleman for at least this year and going forward, that's a little confusing to me. I think it's been really shaky, and he hasn't really earned that kind of respect and confidence from the fan base.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, when it comes to Gettleman, it's really hard to justify what he did in the past, and I think hopefully he's learned from those mistakes. So here's what I will say. I don't think Joe Judge will let him make those same mistakes again. I think that Joe Judge knows what he's doing so much that I don't think he will let Gettleman go out and draft draft players that shouldn't be drafted in certain places. Really allocating resources properly and asking him to go out, because what I think happened here, I think the general manager position had too much power. I like to view the Giants and really any NFL organization like politics. Like a branch of government. The general manager has to have power, but they have to be checked by the judiciary branch, you know what I mean? There has to be a system of checks and balances, and I think Gettleman had too much power back in 2018. I think now it's such a more collaborative effort, and I think Joe Judge and Patrick Graham have so much influence right now. They can go out and say, this is what we want. This is what we need from you. This is the kind of player that we're looking for. And please, we want to be involved in the process. So I think, like you said before, if Joe Judge knows what he wants and knows what needs to be done, he will get it done, and he will collaborate with Gettleman to make sure it happens. I don't think this is the Gettleman show anymore. I think this is way more collaborative. I think this is way more synergistic than it was, and I think that's why we should be a little bit more optimistic.
I do think there's more synergy and more collaboration, but John Mara also did say that Dave Gettleman's a general manager. It's his decisions at the end of the day. He has the final say in everything, and he is running the show. So, that is, we could say what we want about that, but overall I want to talk about the 2018 stuff, because that's so long ago, but it was such a huge topic of discussion today for both of those press conferences, which make of that what you will, and what the reporters were doing. It's a little confusing, but I understand to some extent, because Dave Gettleman has said consistently that every 3 years, that's when you can judge a draft class or whatever. John Mara and Dave Gettleman both openly stated that they made a lot of mistakes in 2018, that Dave Gettleman made a lot of personnel decisions that didn't work out. So, and John Mara said that he did not mandate any of those decisions to build around Eli Manning in 2018. That was all Dave Gettleman's idea, and that was all Dave Gettleman's doing. So all of those mistakes that all of these fans have been trying to place on John Mara and give Dave Gettleman a pass for, you can no longer do that. You must hold Dave Gettleman accountable for the mistakes of 2018. So I think that's something that, fans need to realize and discuss. And I think that really they talked about 2018, but they didn't really explain the intricacies of what they think went wrong. They just said they made mistakes. I wish that the reporters would have asked them more specifically what they think of the 2018 number 2 overall pick, Saquon Barkley, and things like that. You spent the number 2 overall pick on a running back. That's been heavily criticized. Nobody asked them about that. They really didn't get into detail, and I don't know, if you want to just forgive all of the sins that he committed in 2018 just because he kind of made up for them in 2020, that's a little confusing to me, because then I feel like you should really just be giving more credit to Joe Judge and the new coaching staff that came in than the guy who made 2 years full of mistakes before the head coach came in.
Right, yeah, and to your point, before we wrap up here, like you mentioned, if John Mara did say that Gettleman has the final say at the end of the day and he is making those decisions, we can pretty much blame him for everything that happened the past 2 years. There's nobody else to blame if he said
Absolutely.
that. And with that being said, there was the Patrick Omame signings, there was the Jonathan Stewart signings, there was the 2018 draft class where there literally is barely anybody on this team from that draft class. 2019,
Will
injuries,
Hernandez riding
players
the bench.
cut. Half of the back end of that draft class is not even here anymore. And Yikes. You look at 2008, you look at 2020 right now, this past draft class, and you look at it and say, oh, there's a lot of depth pieces there. Those guys actually contributed. And now they're going to be here next year, and we can almost guarantee a majority of them will be. The only guy from the 2020 draft class that is not here anymore is Chris Williamson. He's the only guy that didn't make it. And that's pretty impressive to me that they hit on so many guys they feel confident with. And, with that being said, you can't say the same about 2018, 2019, which makes me think that Joe Judge does have more influence than they're letting on. I think he really has an impact here, because they were like, even when they were 1-7, 0-7, you could tell that the coaches and players were in cohesion, that they were serious, that they were still playing, that they were still communicating well, and that screams to me better coaching, not better GM play. So I think there's a lot of things that we could tell from this press conference that really scream Joe Judge, and they did talk a lot about him and how great he did and what he did for this culture of the organization. But that's my major takeaway. My major takeaway is that Gettleman might have the final say, but Joe Judge has a ton of power, and I really do think there's a system of checks and balances here that is working. It feels like a democracy again. It doesn't feel like a dictatorship where they're fixating on Saquon Barkley or fixating on a player who shouldn't have been drafted, and they're not considering anybody else. They're not considering trading back. They're not considering picking up the phone to hear other picks. I think those days are over. I think the mistakes have been learned, and I think Joe Judge is going to make sure that they don't do that crap again, because we're not going to sit here and take it. But that's all I really have to say on it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of great points. Looking forward, I just think, this is going to be a really crucial offseason. This offseason, they've made a promise that they're going to fix the offense. If the offense isn't fixed next year, someone has to go, whether that be Gettleman or Jason Garrett. Someone has to go if the offense isn't fixed. They've completely promised that they're going to fix it. So I expect to see them make a lot of signings or draft moves towards the offense, and I'm excited for that. So I guess, I was pretty negative in this episode, and I didn't mean to be. It's just there's a lot of things that they brought up in these interviews that were from the past, and I still haven't recovered from those past mistakes that this organization has made. But yes, overall, I do agree with the sentiment that we are trending in the right direction. We have a bright future, and like I've said many times, most of that for me is predicated on the fact that we have Joe Judge leading this team into the future. So I do think we can all instill confidence in Joe Judge and feel happy about that, and hopefully we'll see a really solid offseason once again like we saw last year, and then we can start to really build confidence in Dave Gettleman as well, and the collaboration effort between him and Judge, and hopefully, going forward we can win more games this year and see a much better offense and continue into 2021 and beyond with a lot more confidence and hope for the future behind Joe Judge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's well said. But guys, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Check out the YouTube channel. We have an Xavier McKinney podcast episode film breakdown coming out tomorrow with the Entertainer, and we're going to be doing all those this offseason. I can't wait to get into the draft profiles, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, the whole nine. We're going to be doing a ton of guys, and obviously evaluating the free agents and talking about the mistakes, the things we think that they should improve on. Jason Garrett, we're going to be, obviously the daily updates are occurring, and we're doing the written content as well, so we're really hitting on all cylinders here, unlike the Giants at some points in the season, and that makes me feel really happy, and I love all the support you guys have been giving. So please, if you guys have any comments, anything that you want to share with us, please head up the YouTube channel and comment, because we are here. I respond to all of them. Anthony and I both look at all of them. We post stuff in the community page, and we're trying to grow that. So all of the support there really helps us out and really grow. And you guys are what we do this for. You are the reason we do it. So thank you so much, and we will catch you guys on the next one.